Hello students, this is Mrs. Sonal Patil. In our last class, we have studied about events in sexual reproduction, pre-fertilization, fertilization and post-fertilization, of which we have completed with pre-fertilization events which involves gametogenesis and gamete transfer. Today, we will study second event, that is fertilization. The most vital event of sexual reproduction is perhaps the fusion of gametes. The process of fusion of male and female gametes is called fertilization or syngamy. It results in the formation of diploid zygote. So, fertilization is the process of fusion of male and female gamete. But in members like rotifers, honeybees and even some lizards and also the turkey birds, the female gamete undergoes development to form a new organism without fertilization. So, here in these organisms, new organisms are formed without fertilization, and this phenomena is called parthenogenesis. A very important question for 1 mark. The female gamete undergoes development to form a new organism without fertilization is called parthenogenesis. Fertilization is of two types: external fertilization and internal fertilization. Here in this diagram, the fusion of male gamete and the female gamete results in the formation of zygote is been shown. In the second one, fertilization occurring in the flowering plants is been shown, where you can see the pollen grains which are shed from the anther, fall on the stigma, form the pollen tube, and this pollen tube will carry the male gametes which reaches the ovule inside the ovary. Okay, this is occurring in the plants, fertilization. Now, what we mean by external fertilization? In most aquatic organisms such as majority of algae and fishes as well as amphibians, fertilization occurs in the external medium, that is outside the body of organism. So, the fertilization that occurs outside the body of the organism or the parents, that is in the external medium such as surrounding water, is called external fertilization. It occurs, as we have seen, that it occurs in the fishes and the frogs. The major disadvantage of external fertilization is that the gametes or offsprings are vulnerable to predators, threatening their survival up to adulthood. Since they are present in the external medium, so they have or you can say that they have chances of getting destroyed by the predators. So, it is one of the disadvantage of the external fertilization. Therefore, they need to produce large number of gametes in order to ensure fertilization. Internal fertilization. In many terrestrial organisms belonging to fungi, higher animals such as reptiles, birds, mammals, and in majority of plants, fertilization occurs inside the body of organism. Hence, the process is called internal fertilization. So, the fertilization that occurs inside the body of the female is called internal fertilization. Example are reptiles, birds and mammals. In all these organisms, egg is formed inside the female body where they fuse with the male gamete. In organisms exhibiting internal fertilization, the male gamete is motile and has to reach the egg in order to fuse with it. In these, even though the number of sperms produced is very large, there is a significant reduction in the number of eggs produced. In seed plants, however, the non-motile male gametes are carried to the female gamete by pollen tubes. So during internal fertilization, male gametes are released in the close vicinity of the female gametes, and internal fertilization enhances the chances of fertilization and development. So internal fertilization is more advantageous than compared to the external fertilization. So difference between internal and external fertilization may be asked, you have to note down. Then coming to syngamy versus fertilization. The terms syngamy and fertilization are frequently used interchangeably. Syngamy is a fusion of two entire gametes to form a zygote, including the fusion of nuclei, while fertilization includes all associated events that ultimately lead to syngamy. So these two terms are frequently interchangeable, syngamy and fertilization. Now the last event is post-fertilization event. The events of sexual reproduction that occur after fertilization are called post-fertilization events. So the events which are occurring after reproduction, sexual reproduction, they are called as post-fertilization events. Now this includes, as we have studied, that during fertilization gametes are fused and then zygote is formed. So zygote, the formation of zygote is a post-fertilization event. So it includes the formation of zygote and embryo. Now let us see what is a zygote. The resultant cell after fertilization is the zygote. The formation of diploid zygote is universal in all sexually reproducing organisms. In organisms with external fertilization, zygote is formed in the external medium, whereas in those exhibiting internal fertilization, zygote is formed inside the body of organism. Further development of zygote depends on the type of life cycle of the organism and the environment it is exposed to. In organisms belonging to fungi and algae, zygote develops a thick wall that is resistant to desiccation and damage. This zygote will undergo a period of rest before germination. Zygote is the vital link that ensures continuity of species between organisms of one generation and the next. Every sexually reproducing organism, including man, begins life as a single cell, the zygote. So all sexually reproducing organisms are beginning their life with a single cell, that is zygote, which is the resultant of the fusion of the male and the female gamete. Next comes the embryo, embryogenesis. Embryogenesis refers to the process of development of embryo from the zygote. Again a 1 mark question, embryogenesis will be asked. During embryogenesis, zygote undergoes cell division and cell differentiation. While cell divisions increase the number of cells in the developing embryo, cell differentiation helps groups of cells to undergo certain modifications to form specialized tissues and organs to form an organism. So here two important events are occurring during embryogenesis. The first is the cell division and the second is the cell differentiation. So cell division is what? Here mitotic divisions are occurring, more and more number of cells are added, whereas during cell differentiation these cells are grouped into specialized tissues and then into organ and into an entire organism. That is called as embryogenesis. Animals are categorized into oviparous and viviparous based on whether the development of zygote takes place outside the body of female parent or inside. That is, whether they lay fertilized or unfertilized eggs or give birth to young ones. In oviparous animals, they lay fertilized eggs. Like example, reptiles, birds. The fertilized egg covered by hard calcareous shell is laid in a safe place in the environment. After a period of incubation, young ones hatches out from the egg. So what are oviparous animals? They will lay the fertilized egg. So they are egg laying animals where the young ones will hatch out from the egg. Such animals are called as oviparous. Example, fishes, frogs, reptiles and birds. Now coming to the viviparous animals, the animals which give birth to young ones are called viviparous. Most of the mammals are viviparous. They are placental animals. In these, embryogenesis takes place inside the female body. Because of proper embryo care and protection, the chance of survivability of young one are more in viviparous than oviparous. So viviparous organisms are having more chances of survival compared to the oviparous animals. Example, mammals. So these are oviparous and viviparous animals. Nextly, see the examples for oviparous and viviparous animals. So oviparous are egg laying, whereas viviparous will give birth to the young ones. Coming to the post-fertilization changes which are occurring in the flowering plants. In the flowering plants, the zygote is formed inside the ovule. After fertilization, the sepals, petals and stamens of the flower wither and fall off. In some plants like tomato, brinjal, sepals persist with fruit. Zygote here develops into embryo, ovule develops into seed, ovary wall develops into fruit. That fruit wall is called as pericarp. Again a 1 mark question. The seeds after the disposal from fruits germinate under favorable conditions to produce new plants. So these are the changes which are occurring in the flowering plants after fertilization, where the zygote is developing into embryo, ovule develop into seed, ovary wall develops into fruit, and that fruit wall is called as pericarp. So these are the changes occurring in the flowering plants, which is again shown here in the diagram, where you can see here bisexual flower has been shown. Zygote formation is shown in the first diagram, then which will later develop into embryo. Seed is formed in the next from the ovule. Okay, so ovules are developing into seeds there, and then you can see the fruit develops from the ovary, and lastly the fruit ripens and flower plants will wither off. So this is the post fertilization changes which are occurring in the flowering plants. Up till here we have completed the post fertilization events, and these are your assignment questions from this part of the chapter. The first question, define parthenogenesis, many a times been asked in the exam with example. Second is define embryogenesis. The third one is what is parthenogenesis, give 2 examples. The next one is differentiate between external and internal fertilization. Fifth one is what is embryogenesis, mention 2 important events that occur during embryogenesis. So these are the 5 questions which are oftenly asked from this part of the chapter. So you go through the notes and then solve this particular assignment as such, and these are the very important questions which are most likely been asked in the exam from this part of the chapter. Now this has completed the first chapter, that is reproduction in organisms. As I told you, your weightage for this chapter is 5 marks, 1 mark, 2 mark or 3 marks questions will arise from this chapter, and already have told you the questions, the way the questions will be asked. Please go through the notes, solve the assignment, and these questions are being asked from the previous year's annual as well as supplementary exams. So I hope you have understood this chapter, and in our next class we will begin with the second chapter, that is sexual reproduction in flowering plants, that we will continue For today we will stop here, and thank you.